Hello students, welcome into the new session of CS22 operating system concepts using Linux and Unix. As all of you knows that we are discussing about the chapter number 1 contains the introductory part of the concept called operating system. Many things we have discussed in our previous lecture like the definition of operating system, various features of operating system with their details, functionality of operating system with their details, and then we have started with the types of operating system, in which we have done with batch operating system. Now the next type of operating system which we have to consider is as displayed onto the screen, called time sharing operating system. This is a new horizon into the development of operating system concept. Either it might be of Windows or Linux. Now, what is time sharing operating system? Time sharing operating system mainly depends upon the sharing of time which takes operating system to return the response which is requested by the user. For that reason, the new concept get introduced, that is called as time sharing operating system. Let's discuss it in detail. Now, as you can see onto the screen, time sharing is actually a one type of technique which enables many peoples, obviously they are the users, which are located on a different computers called terminals, for using the same computer at a time. That means, say for example, there is a one star topology networked architecture that is there into the computer lab or organization, where there is a one server and multiple clients are get connected through LAN over that particular server. Operating system is installed onto the server called Windows Server 2012 or higher or any server based operating system. Now that particular operating system have a capability to create multiple number of users. So administrator has created the multiple users like user 1, user 2, user 3, user 4, user 5 up to n. Then all that 5 or n number of users are sitting on a different terminals which is called as clients. Now from that terminal, whenever they have started that computer, or we can say whenever they have started their client computer, a one authentication window will come in front of the screen. On that authenticated window, they have to enter their valid username and password, which is not created on that particular local system, but it is created on the server. Now once they entered their authenticated username and password and press enter, one request from the different terminals will reach onto the single location called server through the LAN cables. Server rectifies all that request, and if all the requests, that means if all the username and password is correct, server generates the response and return back to the particular clients, where client can see their server resources on their respective screens. Obviously, with this particular scenario, user 1 cannot share the resources of user number 2 and vice versa. User 2 cannot share the resources, cannot see the resources of other users. Even administrator who handles the server machine have set up multiple unique tasks for every users. That task can be handled by the client machine with their users. So it indicates that server operating system also handles the multiple tasks, multiple sharings of applications, resources for the multiple number of users. Even on the operating system, over the layer of system software that is called as OS, several application softwares can also be get installed. Even that can be shared for the multiple users. Say for example, on a server, I have installed the application called XAMPP, and I am the administrator of that particular server and given the rights to only the user number 1 and only the user number 2 from the group of 5 users. Then whenever the user 1 and user 2 get logged in, after the successful login of that users, only the user number 1 and user number 2 can get access the XAMPP application into the server. User 3, user 4 and user 5 cannot access the application of XAMPP. Now, these are only the words that I am sharing with all of you. To do it practically, we need an administrative knowledge of servers. Might be any called Windows server or Linux server, but it supports that functionality that is called as multiprogramming. Now, the latest operating systems have all these features of operating system called batch operating system, time sharing operating system, multitasking operating system, multiprogramming operating system. All these are the updates into the operating system. Yet this discussion is not over. So we have not discussed the last updated part of operating system. Up to this, we are getting the knowledge day by day about the working of operating system. So we get to know about batch OS, multiprogramming OS and multitasking OS. There is a single difference between multiprogramming and multitasking operating system. Multiprogramming operating system supports the execution of multiple programs at the same time, while multitasking operating system have an advantage of sharing the same task with n number of users simultaneously. So over there, one issue came in previous operating system which is resolved by time sharing operating system. That means at the same time, same task, suppose it is shared by multiple users, then it is not possible to execute and finish that particular task into the batch operating system as well as into the multiprogramming operating system. By introducing the time sharing concept, that can be easily solved into the time sharing operating system. Now, the main difference between multi-programmed batch operating system and the time sharing operating system is that in case of batch programming, objective is to minimize the processor usage, where in time sharing operating system, the objective of CPU usage is minimized in a very less response time. Again, I am repeating my word. As I have already communicated with all of you in a previous session or previously in this session, time sharing operating system mainly concerns on the time which is shared by multiple users for handling the multiple tasks. This is the problem into the multi-programmed and batch operating system, which has been resolved into the time sharing operating system by minimizing and maximizing the CPU usage time. That means a batch operating system and multi-program operating system maximize the processor usage time. That means it will take maximum number of time of the processor for executing a particular task. Now, by the introduction of time sharing operating system, this usage time get reduced, get minimized, so the task get executed very fastly for the n number of users. That is the benefit of using time sharing operating system. That means within a fraction of time, multiple users get their responses as they enables to share the same time interval at the same time. Let's go ahead. Now the question comes in our mind that why this is to be done. That means why we need to share the time for the multiple users. Can't they get wait for execution of their own task? So the answer is no, they cannot wait, as they are the unique users, or we can say as they are the authenticated users. They have already logged in into the operating system by their credentials. So it should be done by the operating system. The reason behind introducing the time sharing operating system is to handle the multiple jobs at the same time. Previous central processing units are not capable to handle the multiple job at the same time. That means they can accept the multiple jobs, but they queue up all that job in a sequence. There is a very good concept of queue which we have discussed into the data structure, has been handled by the previously installed operating system called batch operating system, multiprogramming, multitasking operating system. In short, the older operating system use the concept of queue. We are aware with the concept of queue which we have learned into the data structure. It consists a technological aspect called first in, first out. If you have not forgotten, then While we have discussed about the concept of data structure at that particular time, we have taken one example of ticket window for the cinema. Over the ticket window, a person who comes first will get the first ticket. Whatever the user number 2 comes, they have to wait for their turn and they have to sit back and relax for that turns to get out. That means if the ticket window is closed and persons who is coming to watch the movie in a cinema, they have to make a one queue where they have to stand in behind the first person. Whenever the ticket window opens, who resides at the first position will get the first ticket, and so on. That is called as queue. Number of persons are there, that means number of jobs are there. Ticket window is single. Operator who sit into the ticket window is a single person. Obviously they are responding to each and every buyers, each and every users who want to buy the tickets, but they respond each and every users one by one only. That means now just consider about the output. The first user who stand in a queue will get the ticket in a very less time, while the user who stands in a queue at last have to wait for the longer period of time. So this is the disadvantage of previously installed operating system called batch and so on. Now that line is parallelly divided into the three different ticket windows. That means in the cinema there are three windows. Three different persons are sitting on that particular windows to give the responses to the users. That means that queue get reduced. Number of responses will be divided parallelly into three windows. It might possible that the time interval get reduced in case number 2 with the comparison of case number 1, and multiple jobs can be executed parallelly. So this is the benefit of using time sharing operating system. That example is explained onto the screen in detail, where I have mentioned a one TPS, which means transaction processing system, where the processor executes each user program in a short computational time that n users who is present can get their responses very faster than the single queue or single execution of the queues. That means if we implement case number 2, every responses will be generated in a very few seconds or microseconds. Now, during this, operating system use CPU scheduling. This is very easy to speak that over the ticket window open the 3 counters and distribute the number of rows or number of peoples in three different windows. But this should be controlled by the superior also. That means superior decides who is going to handle the window number 1, ticket window number 1, ticket window number 2, ticket window number 3, because the cash collection is also done on these three different ticket windows. Obviously, in central processing unit there is not a cash collection, but it's a matter of responding the correct value to the particular user. So it should be handled by the superior component called CPU scheduling. In short, in time sharing operating system, division of the responses into the multiple locations for sharing the single time is handled by the one of the major component of central processing unit called CPU scheduling. Now, as we know that time sharing operating system is handled by CPU scheduling. Now the question comes in our mind that what is the reason to get introduced the concept of CPU scheduling over here? That is dependent on some advantages of CPU scheduling. By introducing the CPU scheduling, operating system generates the quick response than the previous operating system. Second advantage is it avoids duplication of softwares, as this is centrally accessed by the administrator. Third, even it reduces CPU idle time. The third one is very important to get know. What is CPU idle time? CPU idle time means whenever there is a queue of the job waiting to get their responses and resource allocation is done at that particular time, CPU goes into the ideal state as it has not received the second response. So by using time sharing operating system, CPU idle time can also be get reduced. It's very simple that if we have a human resource and we are not using it properly for the execution of several tasks, then single person cannot handle hundreds or millions of requests. But instead of this, if we divides into the HR which we have, response time and the execution of the task becomes more faster. Even some disadvantages are there in time sharing operating system. These disadvantages are problem of reliability, question of security and integrity of user, problems and data, and the major one is data communication. These are the three major disadvantages of the operating system which we are discussing. Instead of discussing these disadvantages in detail, first we will focus more onto the advantages. See, one thing is very clear, all these three things which you can see right now onto the screen, we are not getting into the batch operating system multiprogrammed multitasking operating system. By rectifying the disadvantages of all that operating system, the developers have implemented their system for quick response, avoiding the software duplications, reducing the CPU time intervals, and they have introduced the new concept called time sharing operating system. But as they get used by the several users, they have demanded something more. And their demands are the disadvantages of time sharing operating system. All these disadvantages are removed into the newer operating system which is developed by the developers, that is called as distributed operating system. So no doubt this distributed operating system is another type that we have to discuss, where all these 3 to 4 disadvantages is overcome. That means it has been get solved by the developers, and the newer concept were introduced, that is called as distributed operating system. Right now in this session we will not discuss about the distributed operating system in detail. We'll go in next lecture. We'll go in detail into the next lecture. But first we will justify about the disadvantages of time sharing operating system. Now what these three try to say is, these three try to say that over the ticket window, three different persons are distributing the tickets someday. If any of the user or if any of the operator is in holiday, they have not come up, then what to do? Instead of that particular person who is going to deliver the tickets on that particular window, should we have to close that particular window? Then the answer comes is no, we cannot keep that particular windows to be closed. But instead of that, some other person should be ready. That means that particular have the knowledge of distributing the tickets, taking the printout of that tickets. Even that particular operator have the knowledge of book the ticket. That comes up with the problem of reliability. Whenever there is a human approach, it might possible that if there is a no option, that ticket window can be closed. But as far as the hardware is concerned, which is handled by the software, always there has been an option. That is called as problem of reliability. In time sharing operating system, before the evaluation and introduction of distributed operating system, the same problem occurs. If the resources are not free, if the system's resources are not free, then they will not give the responses. So there is a problem of reliability. Even sometimes the same task and their responses has been generated by the two different resources. So it executes the question of security and integration of users' programs and data. And due to this, the request is is misdirected on different locations of the system, which generates the problem of data communication. So we can say that time sharing operating system have their own advantages, but they have three major disadvantages. Before concluding my lecture, these three disadvantages are the major disadvantages. Due to that, time sharing operating system is replaced by distributed operating system, which we are going to discuss in next session. These three disadvantages of time sharing operating system is reliability, security, and data communication. I hope all of you have the clear idea about how time sharing operating system overcomes the disadvantages of previously used operating system called batch, multiprogram, and multitasking. Now, in our next session, we will discuss about distributed operating system in detail, just like we have discussed about batch, multiprogram, multitasking, and time sharing operating system. Thank you very much, students, for listening me, and have a nice day.